and welcome to my channel, Kitchen Notes from Nancy. If you're new here, I'd like to welcome you to our neighborhood, and I hope you decide to subscribe before you leave today. And if you're a returning visitor, I'd like to greet you with the customary, hey neighbor. In today's video, I am going to share with you a super delicious recipe for pot roast. This is perfect for Sunday dinner, Easter dinner, or just a weeknight dinner if you have the time. So if you want to learn how to put this together with some tasty vegetables, all you got to do is stay tuned. But before we hop into this, I need you to do me a super big favor. Go ahead and smash that like button. And again, don't forget to subscribe so that you don't ever miss an upload. Now, without further ado, let's hop right into it. Alright, so let's hop right into the ingredients. Of course, the start of the show is going to be this it's a little over 3 pound chuck roast. And you want a roast that has some marbling in it, like this one. It has a little bit of fat on this side. And it could have had a little bit more, but this is going to be fine for what we're doing. You're going to need some flour. This is all-purpose flour. We'll also be adding to it some onion, celery, carrots. And I also have some potatoes over here in some water. For our seasonings, we're going to be using Slap Your Mama, the Chef Paul Prudhomme's Meat Magic. I'm going to be using a little bit of salt. I am making this for my mother, and she does not like a lot of salt in her food. So I may or may not use this. I'm going to use some onion powder, garlic powder, black pepper. And then to kind of supplement the fact that I don't use a lot of salt when I'm cooking for my mom, I have some bay leaves, some thyme, and also some rosemary. So I definitely amp up the herbs when I cook for her. We're going to be using some of the Herb Ox sodium-free beef bouillon. I just mixed this with water, and so I'm going to use 2 packs of this. I'm going to be using some red wine, and for this one I'm just using some Merlot. And then we are going to need a little bit of olive oil to sear this off. So what we're about to do now is measure out our seasonings and get started. Or better yet, we're just going to go ahead and season it up here. That's going to be easier. So I'm going to take my Slap Your Mama. And Slap Your Mama does have salt in there, so that's going to be my main salt component. Gonna take some Meat Magic. It also has salt, so we'll add a little bit of that to it. We're gonna skip the salt for now, and then I'm gonna go in on each side with a tablespoon of onion powder and garlic powder. And again, this is powder. This is not, that was a little less than a tablespoon. This is powder, not salt, so it's not garlic salt or onion salt. Please keep that in mind. Alright, so we went with a little less than a tablespoon. So I would say for the whole thing, we would do about 2 tablespoons. And then we're going to sprinkle just a little black pepper. Alright, and now we're going to give that a little pat in. And I did dry this meat off. And what I'll do with the leftover spices that, you know, might come off like that is I'll rake them down off in there when it's time to add in the beef broth. So I'll save them and just add them in there. And I'm going to go rinse my hand and then we'll season up this other side. here. Now I'm going to take some of the flour and coat the meat. And we're going to sear this off in a hot Dutch oven. And I'm actually going to be cooking this in the Dutch oven. So we're gonna get a really good coating of flour. And again, I'm gonna take everything that's left on the cutting board before we get ready to braise it in the oven and add it to the pan. All right, so now we're gonna move over to the stove now that we have this seasoned and floured. So I have had this heating for a little while. I'm gonna go ahead and add my olive oil to this. And like I said, it's already pretty hot. And then I am going to add a little bit of butter, even though I didn't feature it. I'm from the South. I love butter. Butter makes everything you cook better. So we're just gonna add in about a half a stick. But if you just want to use olive oil, that would be fine. You don't have to use the butter. So I'm going to give the butter an opportunity to melt. Alright, so now I'm about to put the first side of the roast down. Alright, I'm going to turn it back up to a medium heat. And then I'm just going to let it sit here. And honestly, you want your pot, I had turned mine down so I wouldn't burn the butter. You want the pot warm for this, so you want it fairly hot so you'll get a sear. So I'll just let it sit here a little longer to get a good sear on it, but it'll still turn out fine. All right, so now I'm going to flip it over, and it's been about 4 or 5 minutes. Is it, baby? All right, so we got a nice sear on it there. And now we're gonna do the other side. So now I'm going to try to do the sides without burning myself. Okay, so I drained most of it out, and I'm gonna add just a little bit. I know that's kind of backwards, but and a little drain down the side, so don't be alarmed by the smoke. I'm gonna go ahead and put the onions in, but that's the only vegetable I'm going to add at this point. Everything else will go in after the roast has been cooking for an hour. For 2 hours. 2 hours. Okay. So we're going to cook these just a little bit. Bit more olive oil to them. I probably could have kept all that oil I had in here. It looked like too much at first, but I think it probably would have been the perfect amount. So now that we've gotten some color on these, I am going to add flour to them. And this is going to help create a really nice gravy. That's why I needed the oil, to help create a gravy. But we're gonna cook that floury taste off of the onion real quick. Well, we're gonna cook the floury taste out of the flour. So we're gonna help it not be raw. All right. Now, you can deglaze your pan however you want to. I am choosing to use, if I can get the top off of it, red wine. And don't worry about the red wine making it have an alcohol-y taste or anything like that. It's not going to do that. It's just going to add flavor, because as the wine cooks, the alcohol cooks out of it. So it's just going to add a super, super rich flavor to this. So don't be alarmed. Now, to that, we are going to add our broth. And I started with 3 cups. And I may go in and add 1 more cup, because I did use 2 packets. So I used 2 packages of the broth. Of the bouillon. So I may go back in and add another cup. Especially because we're adding potatoes and stuff to it. Alright, so like I said, I meant to dump this flour in earlier, but I didn't. So now I'm gonna make a mess on my stove and dump it in. So just get that in there. I just forgot to do it because I have some seasonings and stuff left in there. So I wanted to grab those. To adjust the seasonings just a little bit. Remember, I told you I'm doing this for my mom, so I'm having to be aware that she has to be able to eat it. So we're gonna add our roast back in. I'll put some of those onions on top. That wine is going to add so much flavor. But if you don't want to add the wine, you don't have to. Now, to amp up the flavor, I'm going to add in some bay leaves, and it's coming back up to a boil now. So we're gonna add in some bay leaves. Then we're gonna add in a little rosemary. And a little thyme. If you have fresh rosemary or thyme, feel free. I just use the dried because it's easier for me to make sure it doesn't go bad. Whenever I have fresh, I don't use it up. All right, so what we are about to do, this is so messy. We're gonna clean up the pot a little bit here from the mess I made. And we are going to stick this bad boy in a 300-degree oven for 2 hours. And then after 2 hours, we'll take it out and check it and get ready to add our veggies to it. So after 2 hours at 300 degrees in the covered Dutch oven, I have taken it out and it's already starting to tenderize nicely. That red wine has helped the gravy develop an amazing flavor. And we are going to start adding in our veggies. And in addition, you know, I added the onions earlier. So now I'm going to add the carrots, celery, and the potatoes. And then we're going to close it back up and let it cook for another hour at 300 degrees. And then you will see the amazing finished product. This recipe takes a little bit of time, but I'm telling you, the flavors that you develop and the end result is so worth it. So after an hour in the oven with the veggies, I'm going to take it out of this pot. I'm transporting it, so I'm going to transport it in something different. But I wanted to put it on this plate so I could do the fork test with you. And this meat was so tender. I had to be extremely careful to make sure that I didn't just rip it to shreds. But this recipe is phenomenal. And if you've made it this far, I'd like to thank you for your support. Be sure if you try this recipe to come back and tell me what you and your family thought about it. This is a super easy recipe, even though it does take a little bit of time, but you will not be disappointed. As always, thank y'all so much for supporting my channel. Thank you so much for sticking with me. And until next time, I'll see you in the next one. Bye, neighbors.